Howdy, and welcome back to Barebow Basics. I wanted to do a short follow-up segment to the arrow building video because I really didn't get into how to install inserts or arrow points at that time. And I often see questions about how do you do it and what adhesives should I use. I'm going to share an approach that my best friend taught me about 8 or 9 years ago. And I gotta be honest, it really is the best approach I've come across, and it's the only one that I use and teach. It involves the use of, believe it or not, hardware store hot glue sticks. Now there's specific properties that we're looking for. I prefer this Arrow brand because it has a super strength rating, but more importantly, it's slow setting and it has a low melt temperature. This allows the stick glue to remain flexible even after it cures. The properties of a slow setting mean that even if the point encounters friction as it enters the target bale, it's less likely to become soft right away. And the low temperature melt is great because when you want to reverse the installation, all it takes is boiling water. I prefer this method to super glues, cyanoacrylates, epoxies because it is reversible. And there might be a point down the road where you want to make changes to your arrow and you need either remove your glue and point or your point insert and then reinstall it later. I don't generally recommend the use of archery specific hot melts because the versions that I've used always ended up becoming brittle. They don't remain flexible. Also, this box is significantly cheaper than the archery branded products. So this box will last you a lifetime. I've gone through hundreds of arrows and I still have at least half the box still. So let's get started and I'll show you how I install arrow points and inserts into an arrow shaft using hot melt glue. Okay, so let's go over our work area because this is important. I use propane in my kitchen stove for cooking, so it's a natural heat source for me. If you don't have a natural gas or propane kitchen stove, you can use a candle or a Bunsen burner or even a cigarette lighter, but those devices have much lower heat output, so it will make the process a little bit more tedious and difficult. I do suggest a high output heat source like a stove. You want your heat source located near a readily available cold water running source, like your kitchen sink. So if you are using one of those devices and not your stove, set up shop right next to your kitchen sink. You'll want your equipment handy. I use a set of knocking pliers, an old arrow point, obviously the glue stick, and some paper towels. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and remove this grate because that's just in my way. And we're going to start the stove. Does not need to be blazing hot. Something medium flame is plenty adequate. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to do most of my work with my right hand. I'm going to go ahead and insert an arrow point, an old junky one. I like 125 grains or more. You want that extra metal as a thermal heat sink because we're going to borrow that mass in order to retain heat. Inserts are often made of aluminum and they shed heat very fast as a result. I'm going to hold the point with my knocking pliers in my left hand and I'm going to hold the glue in my right hand. Now, I'm going to split this up into two sections because I have to move the camera, but understand that this all happens pretty fluidly. There really isn't going to be any kind of pause in between, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and start heating up the insert because, as I said, aluminum loses its heat pretty quick, and we need to retain some of that heat, otherwise the glue will start to harden before we're ready. It doesn't take long, even with the slow setting hot melt glue. Once it starts to look clear, like that, we know it's liquefied slightly. We don't need a ton of glue on this, okay? Resist the temptation. We want to apply just a little bit on the shank, not near the bottom, but on the shank. That's really all we should need. Hopefully you can get a good look at that. All right, I'd set the glue down, and then this is where this transition needs to be smooth. I'm going to heat up the glue again for a few seconds and then step over to my sink. Okay, with your cold stream of water running, we transition from the stove right over to the sink. We line up the insert and we twist as we insert into the shaft. Then we quickly put the cold water stream onto the carbon of the shaft and move it up towards the insert or point. What this does is it helps keep the carbon from overheating or warping or delaminating. It only takes a few seconds because the aluminum does cool off pretty fast, even with the thermal mass of the old junky 125 grain point. Once that's done, you can untwist the point and you'll see there is a ring of hot glue, if the camera focuses, right there. Okay, we want to allow that to fully cure. We don't want it hot or soft because what's going to happen is once it fully cures, we should be able to just push towards the point like this with our fingernail. You can see it kind of comes off in a nice little ring. And so I'll just push upwards this way as I go around. Forgive me, I'm not left-handed, so this is a little backwards for me. Let's flip it around to do it the right way. Get in focus, push up, and you'll see the ring just pops right off nice and clean. There's no residue left whatsoever because we pushed the shaft tight up against the insert while the glue was still hot, squished it out, let the ring of glue that extruded out totally harden, and then pushed it off clean. And there you go. That's really it. The insert's installed. All right, so let's say you need to take your insert or your glue and point out because you need to break off some weight, or you want to change the insert out for something heavier to change your dynamic spine reaction and make it softer. This is where hot glue excels. All you need is a source of rolling, hot, boiling water in some kind of container. I like to use a Yeti, and this one's from the fine folks at Lancaster Archery Supply. Because it's insulated and it'll keep the water hot as long as possible if I'm doing, let's say, a dozen arrow shafts. Start by getting your water boiling hot. So with our water boiling, we're going to go ahead and pour it into our container. It's important that we pour it in so that it's deep enough to fully immerse whatever hot glue you're trying to loosen. For a typical arrow insert, you probably only need about an inch, inch and a quarter. If you're dealing with a glue and point that has, let's say, a 2-inch or 2 1/4 inch shank, you need to make sure the water is deep enough to go way past that. All you're going to do is insert your junky point again. Again, we're looking for that metal as thermal mass. It's going to heat up from the water, and it's going to help retain that heat and spread it through the insert. Dunk it and wait about a minute. Okay, it's been at least 30 seconds. So all you need to do, take out your arrow, knocking pliers on the point, twist and pull straight out. While this is still hot, I usually like to wipe it with a paper towel and get off as much of the excess glue as possible so that the insert's ready for reuse. I don't need to obsess about putting it in the flame and heating it up and wiping it off then unless it's an excess amount of glue. But if you're sparing about when you install it, usually you don't need to worry about that. That's it. Arrow shaft is ready for a cut or reinstall of a different insert or a different glue and point. So there you have it. Easy peasy installation or removal of arrow point inserts or glue and points from your carbon shafts. I trust that you found this helpful, and as always, I look forward to sharing more information with you next time.